Hey guys, Shiro here, back with a new video today, and we will try to keep this one as brief as possible, but today's video is about the new wave of challenge boss we have for the 3rd anniversary dungeon on the JP side. And this dungeon is the one where you can get those juicy new stat breaking pots. Essentially, if this is your first time hearing about this, make sure to stay on top of these dungeons. These dungeons refresh every 4 days, and each 4 days comes with a new boss with a new stat breaking pot to get, whether it be HP that was last 4 days ago, and this set of 4 days it's going to be MP. So very limited on how many we can get every so often, so make sure not to miss this. And for this round of boss, just like the previous one, the boss is basically immune to all forms of damage and elements except for ice. Ice magic only. Physical attacks will be 100% resisted. And to find this dungeon, you'll just go to the vortex, and it's going to be the blue tab over here, and you'll have all these to clear. Essentially, just starting from the bottom is going to be the easiest, to the top is the most difficult. Each one will give you a pot. There is no sort of missions to clear in this. It's just clear the quests, get your pot. That's it. So as far as team comps go, it's going to be very reminiscent to what we had last week. Essentially, we're going to have a physical cover tank, just because he throws some AoE physical attacks alongside some single target physical attacks, a buffer, and a breaker. You can forgo the healer, honestly, if your buffer can provide an HP regen buff, and just go with an extra DPS just to quickly clear the boss, just because it will take a long time. Just make sure one of your debuffers or buffers has a D-spell, just because you will need it for the fight, and any type of AoE fire resist for your team. For me, you can also use Ifrit rank 3, because that will give you Barfira. CG Fina herself has some elemental resist buffs, so just anything that will buff your fire resistance, just because the boss will throw out AoE fire magic attacks, and with even a 50% fire resist buff on your team, it's going to do almost no damage. And for my DPS, like I said before, it has to be magic type DPS, because physical will not work on the boss. In my case, I will be using Lulu for Blizzaja. Some other units you can use is Medina for Blizza. Emperor has Blizzaja, and Transterra has Blizzaja. So those are some suggestions. There might be some more out there, but just on top of my head, that's some of the units you can use as DPS. So as for the fight itself, I'll have the important information up on the right side of my screen here when I upload this, but essentially just the important things to remember is 80%, 50%, 30% are breakpoints, and they're not that scary of a breakpoint unless you have the memory of a walnut like I do. And essentially at those breakpoints, he's going to do a small AoE attack, and when he does this attack, he's going to be buffing himself with a reflect buff. So essentially that's going to be the trigger to remember to dispel the boss the following turn. And when you dispel the boss, just make sure it clears all the breaks and imperils you have on the boss. So just make sure to reapply them after your dispel. Don't put them before the dispel, because you're just going to be dispelling them off anyways after your dispel. And just keeping up your just regular attack spirit buffs, keeping up your fire resist buff, and just your cover for your tank. And that's essentially the fight. It's not that difficult of a fight. It is a lengthy one, I will say, if you're using just a single DPS strat like I am. But essentially, you honestly don't need to go with the healer. I just brought one just because. But you could go with an extra DPS if you have another mage that can cast Blizzaja, and that's probably be your best bet. I'll even showcase it here. I won't use any of CG Fina's heals. I'll just have her just buff fire resist buff on my team, and that's it. And my Kuroshiro here is taking damage. It's not from the boss, it's just from her kit itself. If her entire kit is just damaging herself while buffing the team. So the physical damage being shot out to our tank, honestly, is just a little tickle to our Gabranth, but that's because he's built for defense, right? If it was directed to one of our mages, it would have definitely hurt a lot. So that's why we go with the physical cover tank and just not bring a AoE magic tank. Plus, you'll see here that the AoE fire attacks that he does is very, very weak. Once we have our resist buffed, of course. So next turn afterwards, I'm pretty sure we'll bring him down to 80%, and that'll showcase the breakpoints he has. And here's going to be our first breakpoint. So this is going to be the skill he uses for buffing him with Reflect. And as we can see, he has the Reflect buff up there. So we're just going to Dispel that. If you don't have Dispel, just equip Ramu and that'll give you the Dispel spell. Or have Bushido Freedom. Either or works. Just remember to reapply your breaks. And next turn after, I'm pretty sure he's going to use his Blizzaja AoE attack, and I'll just showcase how much damage that doesn't do when you have a fire resist buff. So here's the AoE attack, boom, didn't even see the health bars move. So just have 50% Barfira as a fire resist buff on your team, and that's essentially all you need. But that's the fight here, guys. I'll just fast forward it just to showcase the kill here. But just remember, the most important thing is just to remember 80%, 50%, 30%. Dispel the boss. Don't kill yourself like I did in one attempt. But have a good one, guys. Peace.